We had a staff-monitored program, which is what the country has at the moment. We couldn't finalize it because of the problems at the central bank, the audit of the central bank. We did a second staff-monitored program, which was successful, and we negotiated a 3-year poverty reduction and growth facility program. It was during that period that this thing has happened. So what we are considering now, the IMF knows very well, and they were involved. And the 19.3 million that was put into the Consolidated Revenue Fund was as a result of negotiations with the IMF within the context of the PRGF program. So it is true that not only the Budget Management and Accountability Act, but the 1997 Constitution, talks about all revenues being put into the Consolidated Revenue Fund. But for me, I have read 6 budget speeches in the National Assembly and discussed the financial provisions of the 1997 Constitution extensively with members of the National Assembly. And I found that some of the provisions are very, very restrictive and do not assist the Minister of Finance in the management of public finances, especially within the environment in which we work. So that is true. Saying that all revenues should be put into the Consolidated Revenue Fund. But I have also explained, if you put it into the Consolidated Revenue Fund, you are not giving a true picture of government finances or government revenues, because these are windfalls.
Windfalls, Mr.
They are windfall revenues. They come at a certain time. $35 million in dollars. You put it into the Consolidated Revenue Fund and then allow ministries and departments to spend whatever they want.
Mr. Gaye, you could have put it in deposit funds.
Pardon?
You could have put it in deposit funds, don't you think? Deposit funds.
A below the line account is a deposit fund.
All right, let's move on. If you look at those expenses that were made, let's look at the expenses that were made from this account.
Pardon?
Can we look at the expenses that were authorized and made from this account? The first payment that was authorized was for the payment of $2,737,117 to the embassy in Washington. The central bank could not find the authority in that in their office.
That's the letter of 19th September.
That's the letter of 5th September 2007. So I'll show you this, and could you kindly confirm that this was the instruction you sent for the withdrawal of this amount? Can you give this to the witness, please? Could you confirm that this is the letter of instruction you sent?
Yes.
Payment of the sum for the purchase of school buses and other vehicles?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'll take it so that we can. Mr. Chairman, I'm just applying for this document to be made part of Exhibit CV 34. Can you give it to me, Mr. Chairman?
Order. Letter dated 5th September 2007, Ref MF C 278 brackets 1 from the Minister of Finance to Governor Central Bank. Re. Payment of United States dollars 2,737,117 dollars 50 cents from the Gamcel shares sales account to the Gambia Embassy in Washington for the purchase of school buses and other vehicles is hereby included in Exhibit CB 34.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gaye, did you get a breakdown? Let me just ask the other question first. It seems in all these instructions that you sent for withdrawal of sums, you were receiving instructions from the Office of the President.
I didn't get you clearly.
It seems that in these instructions you sent for the withdrawal of funds, you were receiving instructions from the Office of the President.
Yes.
Now, all we find are letters written by the Office of the President and letters written by you or your permanent secretary to the
Central Bank.
To the Central Bank.
Yes.
Did you request for any supporting documents to justify some of these expenditures?
No, we didn't. We acted on instructions from the Office of the President, written instructions from the Office of the President.
There is a payment, of the first payment of 2.7 million. Did you get an account from the embassy in Washington about how this money was spent?
The Central Bank paid in. That must have been included in the monthly cash transaction report.
From your own office, you did not receive anything back?
No. From our office, we don't.
Right. Did you ask questions about some of these beneficiaries? Like, who is Charles A. Quinn and Associates, and why were they being paid $60,000?
We don't know.
You are paying for things like HIV testing accessories.
We don't know. I mean, Dr. Huja Jaitenjai in South Africa, we don't know. We were given written instructions to make the transfer.
Mr. Gaye, as the Minister of Finance, can you just accept written instructions to make any payment without explanation, since you would be responsible for accounting for the payments?
From the Office of the President, yes. I, as Minister of Finance, would receive instructions, written instructions to make payments, and I honor them.
You don't ask questions?
Without any question. That's the way the system operates.
That is the way with respect, Mr. Gaye, maybe that is the way in which the system was made to operate.
Possibly.
But we do have laws about how the system ought to operate.
No, even before 1994, I mean, I was trained, to respect the decisions of my permanent secretary, instructions of my permanent secretary. I was also trained as permanent secretary to respect the instructions and decisions of my minister.
Even if it's against the law?
Against the law,
against FI,
at that time, that is really far-fetched. It's far-fetched.
Sorry, Mr. Gaye?
It's
that's far-fetched?
To say, the instructions...
What is far-fetched, Mr. Gaye? What is far-fetched?
You cannot think about it, that the instructions that are being given are contrary to the law. That is what I said is far-fetched. So, at the time this instruction was given, there was a rationale that was explained to me. For example, with the school buses, it turned out not to be so because government has a school bus program under the Ministry of Basic Education. and the Minister of Finance provide allocation in the budget to basic education for a school bus program.
But Mr. Gaye, if I may interrupt you, was there any provision in the development budget at this time for school buses to be purchased?
No.
Do you know that part of the funds that were sent to the embassy at the U.S. was spent on sponsoring American students? American students.
No, I don't know. No, I don't know.
So what does accountability then mean? If
it is spent, Gambia government funds are used on American students, it is wrong and should be condemned. That is wrong.
But the instructions to pay the money was given by your office.
Yes, we had instructions.
Agreement. We did not receive a response on the first letter of invitation to discuss, and as a result, we continue to see more issues happening, and we expressed it to the president via writing. Myself, I wrote that, and the president obviously had issues with it. The report came out, but we never had access to the report. So I believe...
Sorry, what report came out?
The investigative report that was done by the NIA in collaboration with PURA. So we ended up writing cabinet. We ended up having a cabinet extraordinary meeting. And at that meeting, I presented from the technical side the issues that were brewing within GAMTEL-GAMCEL. And when we had brought this up to cabinet, it was endorsed that definitely GAMTEL-GAMCEL has entered is in an agreement with a shareholder that is not beneficial, and that the contract that we had signed, which is the Gambia government then, with Spectrum was not in the interest of the state. So through the discussion, it was applauded that we can continue with the termination exercise, and that is where this letter was drafted to terminate the agreement with Spectrum.
Okay. So after the letter was drafted?
After the letter was drafted, we wrote to them terminating the agreement.
Did you take part in the negotiations for the repurchase of the shares from Spectrum?
No. I was from the beginning against the concept of partnering with Spectrum based on what they were delivering and so forth. So I was not part of that.
Sorry, my question relates to the repurchase. You know, after the termination of the management agreement, government then decided that they were going to repurchase the shares.
That is correct. Actually, the process, how it used to work back in the day, ma'am, is that the ministry didn't really have a say in terms of what the investors were coming into the sector. For some strange reason, investors would be brought down from the office of the president down to the finance ministry, and then it is later that we are normally informed. And I remember that I had never taken place in the resale of the shares. However, I was once invited over to the former Minister of Finance's office to sign a document for the resale to an Emirate investment group. And after looking at the agreement, without the presence of the Attorney General, a legal representative of the government, without a direct directive from His Excellency then the President, and also just so many flaws in the agreement, I refused to sign. So
what was the name of the Emirate group? Do you remember?
I think they were in Emirate Investment Group, really. I don't remember the details because I left the documents there, but what I can recall is that this happened just after the termination, around November 21st, around that time. They came into the Gambia and they were pressurizing in the meeting, saying they have a flight to catch and we have to sign, and everything was done. I told them I cannot sign it, and since then...
Who were these people?
Pardon me?
Who were they? If you don't remember the name of the company, who were the people you dealt with? Did you capture their names?
In my notes here, all I see is Emirates Investment, and they were the ones who were selected to do the rollover, to roll over the shares, meaning take over the shares that belong to Spectrum. the resale, that is, of the shares.
It didn't go through, that's what you're saying?
It didn't go through because I didn't sign it, and I left the office because of several reasons.
You said the Ministry of Finance, did you say?
Yeah, Ministry of Finance office.
Who was there on the part of the Ministry of Finance?
Honorable Balla Gaye.
Okay. So in terms of the repurchase, you did not take any part?
No, ma'am.
Right.
At that time, I was supporting a public tender, and we were trying to see if the government can absorb the shares. That's what the ministry was working towards.
Let me understand one thing. Who represented government as a shareholder in Gamtel Gamcel? Was it your ministry or was it the Ministry of Finance?
Well, honestly, from my notes, it's indicating here Ministry of Finance, and they are the accounting ministry, so I believe that if any loans or agreements should be taking place with dealing with finances, they should take the lead. And we took the lead to advise regarding the technical aspect and contract of delivery of services, but when it came to the accounts, it was the responsibility of finance.
Was your ministry under the Office of the President at the time you were SOS?
No.
You were not under the Office of the President. You had direct responsibility for the portfolio of communication and information.
Yes.
Why was it that there was this need or this drive to sell off part of Gamtel and Gamcel? You just mentioned a public tender, that you supported a public tender. Why was this drive to sell off part of Gamtel and Gamcel?
Well, to be honest, when we had terminated the agreement, we were thinking more on a national point of view, which is that Gamtel Gamcel can really stand on its own, and if the right investments and push is given to it, it can meet up to the standards as looking at its legacy. But when Spectrum was kicked out, there were two diverging views. There was a view coming from the OP, which it seemed they were interested in having someone take over the shares from Spectrum, still looking for another partner. But according to my notes here, November 27th, 2008, I had written down here that the government must conduct a due diligence before approving or rejecting any investor, and also that government should make sure the sale process could go through an open bidding process, if at all they were to do that, a competitive bidding of Gamcel if they should bring in an investor. And we were lobbying to see if the government can absorb all the shares, but that was not seeming possible at that time.
Were you aware of any authorization to Mr. Mohamed Bazi to sell off 30% shares in Gamtel Gamcel?
No.
I'll just show you exhibit MS 151A, which is a letter written by the Secretary of State for Finance and Economic Affairs to Mr. Mohamed Bazi, and which is copied to the SOS for information communication. And can you tell us anything about that document?
Well, I don't recall this letter, to be honest.
You don't recall it?
I know.
Okay, that's fine. Can you collect the exhibit from the witness? Now, you mentioned that there was Spectrum were not transparent about the finances. What exactly did you mean?
Well, they were not submitting monthly reports regarding the shares belonging to the government. And because they had hired the managing company as well, they had the upper hand where they could not, submit things or not be transparent about the funds. So it's only after the report that we saw a release from the president saying that they should be charged for economic crimes instead. based on their findings of the financials. What we were able to only collect was reports from Gamtel staff. The interim management that was constituted was able to present to us reports with what they had. And in what we had to do instantly was to work on the billing to take over that and the gateway. So, to be honest, I didn't see the report that indicates the amount of resources that were lost or were not fairly shared and so forth.
Was there a board in place at the time that Spectrum was in charge of the management of Gamtel?
Yes, I believe there was a board in place. However, I'm more au fait with the interim board I had constituted after the termination.
So when you say they were not submitting reports, monthly reports, who were they expected to submit monthly reports to?
The Ministry of Communications.
I have no further questions for the witness.
You may carry on. Yeah, no?
I have no further questions, unless you do have.
I see. All right, I'm just wondering about that document.
Yes.
What is it part of an exhibit already?
The agreement?
Yes.
No, it's not been exhibited yet.
Not yet.
Not yet, no.
I see.
Yes, we assume that she was the signatory, but she's saying that's not her signature. So we'll have to.
Well,
we'll see how.
May I have that document, please? Is there another copy?
Of the initial management of Gamtel staff, matters were brewing, and a report was brought to our attention at the ministry. And when the matter was brought to me, I decided to host an investigative team, including the Attorney General, and we also included Gamtel management at that time. We tried to elaborate on the agreement areas that were being breached, such as the services and some of the agreements that were, I don't have the agreement here with me, but if I can recollect on my very old notebook, there were some main issues that were highlighted. That brought to the termination of the agreement. They were not being very transparent at that point, which is Datacon, the management company, about the finances and accounts regarding the shares and the